Yeah, so food. Tapping into
Coming off of Thanksgiving, right?
yeah, coming off of Thanksgiving, kind of tapping a little bit back into like the synthetic factory made things versus natural uh, foods and such, and then including that all in the holidays. Well, good luck. I don't know. I know for me, for instance, like Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving used to be like my favorite holiday ever, as far because like I loved the food. I will eat 3 plates of everything until I feel like I don't want to move, and then more, and then more. Like for our family, it used to be a huge thing.
And then dessert.
And now that like our diet has significantly shifted to where like we try to eat like pretty as close to vegan as possible. There's times where you eat a piece of pizza, it does not settle well the next day, but sometimes you just got to do it. But so we went into Thanksgiving with like, okay, there's probably not going to be a lot of stuff that like we're going to be able to eat or going to want to eat this year. And I went into it like, I'm not overly hungry right now. I had a big breakfast. I'm only going to take a little bit of a couple things. And as I'm loading up my plate, I just couldn't stop myself. And then the next day, like for like a solid 24 hours, just felt like garbage. Just terrible. And so,
Yeah.
why do we do that to ourselves? Like, why, and like every time we do that, like we're always just like, why did we do that? It tasted real good, but like we know the outcome. It's not going to be fun. And it's like, I don't know. I think for me, I have a significant addiction to processed like sugar foods that I'm working myself slowly out of, and snack foods, which is why when Ronan's here, we bond real well over a bag of Cheetos or anything that
goldfish.
Exactly.
Pizza goldfish.
But like I even noticed like the other night eating, like I have this weak spot for Cool Ranch Doritos. And just these past couple nights when I've been trying to eat a few, I feel terrible after. And I'm like, okay, clearly I need to stop eating these. But it's like, I don't know. It's convenient. It's an addiction, really.
Yeah.
I mean, like the addiction to sugar and processed foods is like real. I've gotten myself out of that habit a couple times, but it takes a solid 2 weeks to really get yourself away from that and not feel like you have to indulge in something.
Yeah, if not,
you shouldn't be
more,
eating.
So yeah, because there was, for me, like I'm like, I don't know if you guys have heard like the blood type diet, but that's something that like my mom has always been kind of a big proponent of. And like when I was working with Ashley, she was talking about that too. But like, so I'm like, oh, positive, and like, oh, blood types are supposed to be like, a lot of meat eating and stuff like that. I was vegan when I was in college and it turned out terribly. I ended up with pica, like just horrible, like nutrient and like just all sorts of issues. So after that, I kind of bounced around for a while and I did keto for a little bit. And that kind of messed me up too because I didn't do it the right way. So then I was like looking into just different types of diets and things like that. My stepmom actually started doing the carnivore diet like a while ago, and she did it I think for like 2 years or something like that, and she really enjoyed it. But obviously like the price of meat is insane and like just to eat only meat is like really intense. But I actually found somebody, Michaela Peterson. I don't know if you guys have heard of Jordan Peterson, but his daughter, Michaela, she grew up with like horrible health issues. Like, I mean, by the time that she was 2, she was diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis. And like by the time she was like 19, had already had like a hip replacement, like ankle surgery and like all sorts of stuff like that. So she looked into the carnivore diet and then kind of created this like lion diet, which basically is kind of the same, like eating primarily meat, but being totally off of processed food. And like for me personally, like after Thanksgiving, like I hate turkey.
Sorry. Oh my God. I hope everybody's witnessing this.
What is he doing?
Leave. He's trying to get
He's like, no.
my tissue that's up here because he's obsessed with
Oh my goodness.
Down, sir. No. Drop it. Drop it. Drop it. Drop it.
Oh, he doesn't want to
That was
drop
the
it.
That was my cord adapter. Oh, there it is.
Oh, jeez.
Got it.
My goodness. Slight interruption.
Oh,
It's all good.
Sir. Excuse me, sir.
Sorry for that.
Excuse me, I was talking, sir. No, it's good. But, you know, like processed food and stuff like that. And one of the things for me personally, like after the holidays, I felt horrible. So I hate turkey. We didn't do a turkey because I hate it. I cannot stand turkey. So we did steak instead. But then we had like, you know, desserts. We had cookies from Crumble, which I don't know if you guys know what that is because it's kind of West Coast thing. But Crumble, we had cookies, and then we made these like apple turnovers, and we had like green bean casserole and mashed potatoes, like all this stuff that like normally I don't eat. So I felt horrible, and like I really did not feel good up until like yesterday, and then like today I'm like back on my regular diet and stuff like that. But like one of the things too that's really important with like processed food and sugar, and I think the reason why a lot of people stop early, like instead of like you mentioned, like it's 2 weeks usually, I'd even argue it's longer than that because a lot of people he's throwing a fit over there.
Oh yeah, he's really
he's like, pay attention to me. Yeah, he is.
When his other mom is sick, he gets real annoyed that he's not getting the attention from her.
He's like, what the heck? That's funny. Oh my goodness. Okay, anyway. But there's I don't know if you guys have heard of like candida, but like candida overgrowth, that's real. And like especially for those of us that eat a lot of sugar, like feel like we're addicted to sugar, like processed foods, like it's so tough. And like when I was in college, like right after college, I think I like detoxed out of that. It took like 6 weeks. It took like a full 2 months for me to like actually like detox out of it. And it was horrible. It felt like I had the flu. Like people always say like the strongest addiction on earth, like more than like hard drugs and meth and stuff like that, is sugar, because it's absolutely insane. So yeah.
And the effect that sugar has on your brain is the same exact effect that those drugs have on your brain. That's literally, and so if you look at processed foods, no wonder you crave it all.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Especially the processed sugar, like corn syrup and what is it? High fructose corn syrup, and there's another one. White sugar. I don't know what it's called. Maybe there's a name,
like the
you know, the like really brilliant white one.
Like granulated. Like it's not
granulated,
sugar,
regular Florida crystal, whatever the heck it is. It has like no naturalness left to it. Those especially the corn syrup though. Yeah. And it's like in pretty much everything.
Oh yeah, it is. It is in everything.
Exactly.
You know, if you're trying to go and stay away from everything, good luck. Like basically take processed food out of your diet, like entirely. And it's hard, you know, especially like for those of us that still work in corporate, or we have like, you know, jobs that tax us. Like the last thing you want to do when you get home is cook, you know, a meal or something. It's just easier to grab like a snack in the cabinet, or, you know, a frozen food, or, you know, pre-made something. Fast food, don't get me started, you know, anything, right? Like, and, you know, even for me, right? Like, I feel like I know a lot of stuff about this topic, but I'm just as bad as everybody else. Like, you know, hey, yeah, we're running late, or Aaron's got soccer, we're running around, and it's like, oh yeah, let's just grab, you know, Bird Call, which is like a better version of Chick-fil-A, by the way. It's amazing. It's a Colorado thing. But still, you know, it's just like, oh yeah, it's amazing. It's really good if you guys get the chance. But, you know, like,
but then like,
I don't know, it's just, it's interesting.
And then like the economic standpoint of it too is like, it's really expensive to eat healthy foods. Like even as like having like a good income, like you go to the store and you buy like a few things all from the produce section, and you're like, what did I just spend $100 on? Like, and people can't afford that, which is then why they're buying processed foods and canned foods. And then like in regards to like the meat thing is like all like most of the meat that you buy from a grocery store is still processed in a way, or it's filled with hormones, or it's filled with antibiotics and like all these things. And like, and we've always said that like we would go back, like there's times where like we'll eat venison or, you know, things like that that we know have not been processed, and our bodies react perfectly fine to it. But like, if you eat something meat wise from the store, forget about it. And so like we've always said, like if we can find somebody to like buy a cow from or split a cow or something
that's
like
what
that.
we did last year. Yeah, we did that last year with my family. So that's the only reason why we eat as much meat as we do, is because we have all that. We have a freezer stocked full. But then it's like not everybody can afford that stuff, or not everybody has the access to that. Like thankfully we're in Colorado, and we're in an area of Colorado where there's like local ranchers that are not that far out, and they'll drive, you know, to the Springs to come drop off your produce, drop off your meat and stuff like that, you know. But it's like, you know, if you're in an inner city, or if you're like in the middle of the country and they just don't have anything around, like what else are you going to do?
Right.
It's crazy. Yeah. Don't get me started on all the conspiracy of all of it either, because I'll go off the rails here. So
the whole beginning of all of this is moving away from natural everything. You know,
exactly.
You know, the so I also eat predominantly plant-based diet. I call it plant-based diet because, you know, vegan is more, it's a triggering term for many, and it also implies that you don't buy anything that has been hurting some sort of animal, and can't really guarantee that. So for me, it's more so plant-based. But I will say that there are a lot of plant-based foods that you should not be eating at all. Just like there's a lot of processed foods in general that you should be eating at all. And I would say that if people want to label things as healthy, but really don't want to take the time to actually learn what the heck does healthy even mean. And they just see a label that says, you know, it looks green and it's healthy-ish, quote unquote, but it actually isn't. If it says low sugar, for example, or low calorie, okay, then there's something really wrong with this product. 9 times out of 10. And those things cause other issues, and then you're wondering why you're still unhealthy, or you're experiencing your symptoms or getting worse symptoms or whatever it may be. And also I wonder about the factor of like looking at your plate and seeing what color is your plate these days. Predominantly it's all brown. There's not even like real color in there.
Or white. If you go to like the real, you know, bleached version of everything. Yeah. But that's it. And that's what we like have talked about, is like, just because you're buying a quote unquote plant-based food, but you're getting it out of the freezer section at the grocery store, doesn't really, you might as well just go eat all the other stuff that you really want anyway, you know? And like, but that goes back to like Lexi, what you were saying is like people, like you just don't have, most people, if you're in corporate and you're this and that, you don't have the time to like make your own veggie burgers and do all the things or afford the ingredients that it takes to buy all them. And so, and like, and just the cost of even buying all the processed stuff is insane. Like, I just like, I look at it, I'm like, no, this is not even worth it. Might as well just go get that bag of Doritos, you know? Like,
right. Might as well just eat what you actually want. Yeah, I was gonna say too, from like Alex, you were talking about like some of the stuff has like worse stuff in it, you know, like just because it says it's, you know, 0 sugar, low fat, you know, low carb, whatever, like you really have to be questioning that, because like, for example, my mom, like when we were younger, she used to drink Diet Coke like it was nobody's business. Like always had a case of Diet Coke everywhere, was always drinking it, like drank that more than she drank water. And it was like, she thought in her head, it was like, well, because it's diet and there's no sugar, like, okay, great. Like that's so much better for me. But then, you know, come to find out like 5 or 10 years later, it's like, okay, yeah, but now you're just ingesting like metric tons of aspartame, and like that is the worst thing ever for you. Like there's no comparison. So it's like on that kind of synthetic, like the way that we've traded like as a society, like, oh yeah, sugar isn't good for you, so here, have the sugar alternative. The sugar alternative is so much worse than the actual sugar to begin with. So it's like, what are we, you
Right.
know, what are we doing here?
Right.
You know,
Have
like
this chemical that we
low,
made
the
in a
whole low
lab.
fat. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, oh yeah, it's so much better for you. But huh? No, like
Right.
if you want sugar, just go have the regular Coke.
Right.
Like, because
Right.
at the end of the day, there's going to be less stuff in it than the diet. But, you know, like my mom, you know, grew up in the age, like my grandma raised them with like low fat, no salt, like all that stuff. And just thinking about that from like a biology standpoint, just chemistry, like think about the way that our
Right.
bodies are made up. If you have no
Mhm.
salt, you're gonna die.
Right.
Like you're gonna end up with like
Right.
horrible health issues, you know. And like now it's to the point too, like as an adult, she doesn't want to eat things with a lot of salt or, you know, healthy, you know, fats and things like that because like the taste and the texture and like just the mental thing of it, like she's just kind of like, oh god, like I don't, you know, I don't want that, you know, like I don't know, like it's not good for you. But it's like, no, that is
Mhm.
good for you. That's what's good for you,
Right.
not the, you know, other.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you
Um,
like in like thinking about like too like so like when we shifted like our diet a lot and like especially for me like I know like I got a lot of comments from people who were like, why would you, sir, really? I go lay down. But like people who would be like, well, why are you doing that? Why aren't you like, I know like for instance, like my parents, when I said, yeah, we'll come over for dinner, but like we're not gonna eat meat. And my mom was like, wait, what? Like, what does that mean? Like, so what should I make? Because like for us, meat was like such a, then me growing up, like meat was such a staple in our diet. Like every dinner was cooked with some sort of like meat. And it's funny because it almost seems like sometimes people get offended when you're like, no, I don't want to eat that.
yeah.
And it's like trying not to say, well, like you're not bad and I'm better than you. It's just like it's a difference of opinion. And like now that I know what it feels like to not have certain foods in my body, I'm like, oh, so like that's why you just feel terrible all the time because you're just putting all this stuff into your body, but you don't know the difference because you've never eliminated it. And so then when you
Yeah.
finally do, you're like, oh, okay. I don't feel bloated. I don't feel tired. I don't feel all of these negative things of that, all of these processed things put into our body. And then even like the like hormones and like I mean if people have read any research as far as like our agriculture and like our meat industry and our seafood, like it's first of all we're killing everything with it, but like in addition to that we're just pumping our own bodies full of like more hormones, more antibiotics, and then we wonder why we have all these weird crazy health issues, you know, down the
Mm-hmm.
line. And like it really, a lot of it stems back to food, which you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, it's
and
interesting.
The balance of
When
food
I
as
was in
well.
school, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Alex.
The balance of like what it is that we eat has also gone. I would say haywire. Um, I remember when I was like a kid, like my mom always said that when she was growing up, they rarely ate like chicken or anything like that because it was so expensive. So their diet was predominantly just like beans, rice, whatever vegetables they could grow in their garden. Um,
Mm-hmm.
she granted she's from a different country, but and then we are growing up here in the United States, and my dad is a steak and potatoes guy. So I grew up quite often eating steak and potatoes, and then when my dad would cook, and then my mom was some sort of vegetable and some sort of grain thing. Um, and I remember when I like started to switch over, it was mainly because my at that point through college and everything, my diet was just ramen noodles, hot dogs, some sort of beef burger, and that was it. There was nothing else. And so, of course, I'm going to be feeling quite horribly. And then that kind of spiraled over into like, well, I need to change my diet to this. And so I went into all kinds of yo-yoing and swinging and trying all kinds of stuff. And at the end of it, I was like, F all of this stuff. It's all making me feel terrible. I started getting aches and pains and gaining weight in places I didn't know you could gain weight, having symptoms I didn't know you could have symptoms of. Um, And then when I switched over and I just eliminated all the process, most of the process, I can't say all because of course I love mac and cheese and I have those things too. I feel so much better now. In fact, like I go days without having a salad. I think like I feel like I need something cold. I always feel like I need something cold in my diet, and I think that everybody's composition, depending on like where they came from and all that, also has to do with it. Like some people need more warm foods, and some people need colder foods and lighter foods. I think there's something to it. And I think we just treat everybody. This is the food pyramid. Everybody has to eat this way, which is kind of crazy. Some people are more, is it predisposed to having more cravings towards a certain food group than others, like sugars or carbs or whatever it is that it may be that affects that individual. I know people that I grew up with that didn't like meat at all, like not because they were like vegetarian or vegan or anything. That term didn't even truly exist when I was a kid. It was just they didn't like the texture. Okay.
Right.
But I think like a lot of the issues is like the processed, not knowing what balance means, and not really taking the time to understand your own body and what makes you feel good. I don't know where I'm going with. There's no point to that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Lexi, were you saying something about? I think you were talking about
something, yeah.
When you were at school.
Oh, it was just on the topic of, hormones and stuff like that. It's just interesting because when I was in class and stuff, there was I don't remember why we were talking about it either because it was a psych class, but for whatever reason, my professor was talking about how it's really interesting to look at like the data from, it was probably like child development or something like that, but it's interesting to look at the data year over year from like the 1800s on girls that go into puberty and like the age that they do, because it was a really weird phenomenon. Like after the 60s, like really the 50s, but like 60s, 70s especially, and then like into today, the average age for when young girls go into puberty has like been like decreasing. So, most girls wouldn't start until, 14, 15, 16, sometimes 17, 18 even, way back in the day. And now all of a sudden you're seeing young girls that are like going into puberty as early as like, early like 10, 9, 8, somewhere around in there. And it's like absolutely insane. And the only thing that you can really figure out is, are you drinking milk? Are you eating food? Are you having, like meat that's raised with antibiotics or, cheese? There was something when we bought some of the stuff for Thanksgiving, like I was supposed to make cheesy potatoes because that was just something that sounded great for both of us. And I don't usually eat dairy. So if we do, usually I get organic, but the place that we went to just didn't have anything. So we ended up having to just get like the regular cheese. And it was the weirdest thing to me because I haven't bought, purchased, or ate any of that kind of stuff in such a long time. Like if I was eating dairy, it's like strictly like the organic kind and, whatever. But like now they have like a little stamp that's on the cheese that says like not, comes from cows not treated with RBST. And it's like that for my entire life. Yeah, I've always seen like stamps on food that says like, oh, it doesn't matter if it was treated with RBST because there's no significant, correlation in that affecting anybody. So even if it was, just shut up. It's fine. Like, don't worry about it. But now they actually have like a stamp on food that says like, no, it wasn't treated with this growth hormone. It's like, what? That's crazy. So now you're actually admitting that this is bad for us. But like, still though, like, huh? Like what?
Also,
it's just it's crazy
that the milk lasts way
forever
longer now
than forever. It was when I was it's so weird.
Like, wait, so weird. How did this change?
I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I'm just not going to drink it. That's disgusting.
And like,
no thanks.
And like Mia has always said, like, what? Like the thought process of like we're the only mammals who like drink another mammal's
milk?
Like
weird.
all these
So
mammals drink their own, like their own animals' milk. They don't like, it's not like you're giving a cow goat's milk and vice versa.
But then,
but then
it also stops once they're not babies anymore. Like, we're the only
right.
mammals on Earth that drink other mammals' milk first off, but then also after we're babies. Like, huh?
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't. And I think like, and like you were talking about like the labeling. Like we watched like that one documentary on Netflix about the fishing. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head.
Was it recent?
And yeah, fairly. Yeah, it came out after like the farming one. Like it's like the same premise as that, but it's like not the meat industry. It's like the fish industry. But like that these companies like you look at like a can of tuna fish and they're like, this was a fresh tuna from like, and you're like,
wild caught.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, wild caught. And like they said in this documentary, there's so many like things that they have found that says that like that they have proven that it is not wild caught, and like it like
yep.
Or like that they're putting other types of fish in it.
Like,
oh yeah, that's just a fucking just.
You always have to look at
it's all farce.
Oh,
yeah, you have
for
to look
sure.
at the company that owns the subsidiary or the smaller company that says what it is. If it says organic, look at who owns who, and then that master company. You can't. I don't know. You just can't really trust it.
You can't trust them.
Mm-hmm.
No. There was something that I saw not too long ago. I mean, they always come out, different lists about like, oh, this company's owned by this and this company, blah, blah, blah. But it was like specifically on like natural foods. It's like if you go to like Whole Foods or like we have here Natural Grocers. So it's like a same thing. You have the same food, but it's like far less expensive. So like that's usually where we go. But like it's so important to look at like who actually owns these companies, because there was like a whole list of like, I don't know, 50 health food companies, and it's like they're all in the store, and like the store specifically is like very intense about like what they actually have in the store. So like they're very good on like usually doing research on like who owns this company, like is this actually like a natural food, is it like just kind of a scam, like that kind of thing. And they usually don't have anything in the store if it's not truly like a natural food product, and a lot of the food is like very minimally processed, etc. But there was a whole list of like 50 health food companies, and it showed like which ones were like recently bought, and it's companies like Alba, like Cascadian Farms that does like a lot of like the frozen fresh food and stuff like that, and like all of them are bought out by like Nestle or God forbid Monsanto, but just like all sorts of random like not good companies. Like, so it's like you can't trust any of it anymore. Not that you really could to begin with, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think you said earlier, Lexi, like it's like a whole, like you were saying, like the conspiracy behind it. But I think that goes into like what we were even talking about last time when we were talking about like pharmaceutical medications and like meds that are like made in a lab, and then the same with food or processed foods or foods that have all of these things in them that like really our bodies don't want. And like, what's the goal? Like, what's the end game? Is it? And I think what it is just it's just a whole revolving door of processed food. You feel like crap, you get sick, you have chronic things, all these things, and then you need these drugs to fix it all, or just, I don't know, not fix it, because we're not fixing it, but we're gonna just suppress that symptom.
But that's what they tell you. Yeah, and that's what they tell you. And like the correlation between what you eat, so like gut health and then overall health, is like absolutely astounding. Like over the last 15 years, if there's one thing that I've learned that like if I could tell anybody about it, is like actually look at what you're eating, what you're putting into your body, and how your gut health is, because your gut is like it's the like ground zero for like literally everything in your body. Like if you're having anything, if you're having acne, if you're having chronic fatigue, if you're having issues with your joints, chronic pain, flare-ups, like literally anything, it goes all of it goes back to your gut. And just very simply, I think, without diving too far into my little tinfoil hat, if you think about the main goal for everybody in the pharmaceutical industry, right, in society, is to keep us sick. So if by making sure that what we're putting into our bodies is not actually good for us and it's causing sickness, like, you know, a lot of people, you know, yeah, I'm plant-based, but it's like, okay, well, a lot of times the vegetables, just the same as the meat, vegetables you get from the grocery store, almost 100% of the time are going to have glyphosate on them. A lot of the times the seeds are going to come from Monsanto. A lot of times, like, they're just going to be covered in other pesticides and other things. Like, all of these things are just meant to keep and repress our bodies from allowing them to do what they're supposed to do. Like, our bodies have the amazing ability to heal themselves. The only thing that they need, like, if you're sick or if you have an issue, 9 times out of 10 is another food or another natural remedy or herbal medicine or something like that. And then, you know, you help yourself and you get through it. But now so many of us, we're so sick to the point that our bodies can't do that themselves anymore. And so many people don't know that. So then they go and they get the medication from the doctor. And that just makes it even worse. Like, it's just a continuous repetitive cycle.
Right. And you don't even know where to start because, like, there's so many issues that it's like, I don't know.
And there's so much misinformation. Exactly. There's so much misinformation. There's so much, like, you know, some, like, I've actually heard from mainstream media, like, oh, you can't trust, you know, the conspiracy theorists, the tinfoil hat wearers that tell you that all you need to do is just have vitamin C to get over this cold. Like, no, you definitely need to go get this medication. Like, they're wrong. Like, imagine, and I always try and remember too, like, where we started. Like, the reason why my family and I started on this kind of journey, the reason why I know so much about health and wellness and, like, all that kind of stuff and food is because we've had such a terrible run with it. Like, we have, like, so much stuff, like, genetically, but then also too, like, you know, my mom was in such a dire place that it was like, it was emergency. It was like SOS time. And it was like the only other thing that we hadn't tried that we were thinking, like, maybe this could work was food. And once we started on that path, like, all of our lives have gotten, you know, monumentally better since then. But it's like, again, like I said before, like, we know all this stuff, but also at the same time, it's like, well, yeah, I know all this stuff, but also, like, sometimes it's easier just to go and get, like, a burger from wherever or grab some chicken or, you know, grab that, like, processed food because it's just easier. So it's like, I don't know, it's an interesting dichotomy that we kind of run too, because it's like, yeah, some of us do know this, but then also at the end of the day, like, we're still eating crap and things that we know aren't going to be very good for us. But it's like, so why do we allow that to happen? You know, like, I feel like there are other areas in our lives where it's like, hard stop. Like, no, we're not going to do this. But then on the same hand, it's like, what about food? Because that's the same idea.
There's a theory that I recently read, and I started thinking about it even deeper. If there's people who think future, more into the future about, like, well, if I make this decision, it will affect my future X, Y, and Z. There's some people that are just hardwired that way, and then there's, I think the majority of people are not wired that way in every aspect that they're thinking of. So, like, for me, I realized, oh, well, if I start thinking about, if I eat this one thing, how would it affect X, Y, and Z in the long term? Will I stop eating it? Will I change my habit to something else? And I noticed that I decided, like, a couple months ago, I will never ever have McDonald's again, for example. And
good for you.
Every time I
That's
see
awesome.
McDonald's now, I think to myself, I made a promise to myself that I'm not going to eat McDonald's. So I'm not going to go there, even for the French fries. I'm not going to go for the French fries. It lasts me forever.
Oh yeah.
So I wonder, like, that's not easy. Let me tell you, I love fast food. Not that maybe because I didn't grow up on fast food, but it just tastes so good.
It does. And they do it on purpose. I mean, look at Chick-fil-A.
Yeah,
Chick-fil-A is riddled with sugar. Like, there's a reason.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that plays a small role in all this, is that we're just so, the convenience of something that you could just grab and eat versus, oh, I'm going to have to make this thing. Or I'm going to have to cut this up and do something with it. It just is hardwired in everything that we do here, at least in the States. I'm not sure everywhere else, but, you know. If you
Well, I
take
mean, that's
contact,
actually a good point though, because like you think about like Spain or
mm-hmm.
like European countries. I'm thinking Spain specifically, and I can speak on this with authority, but they have siestas. Everybody goes home in the middle of the day. And
That's
the whole
nice.
point is so that you can go and make a meal instead of going out somewhere. You go and you make a meal, you have it, you make it for yourself, you take a little snooze, and then you come back to work or you finish up your work at home or whatever. But it's like that is hardwired into their society,
Oh,
slowing down and like actually working with food instead of just being like, okay, rush, 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 go, 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 which I think is how our society has been. That's why we're saying like
yeah.
we're all programmed and hardwired to just be like, oh, this is easier.
Even
Right.
like,
Right.
I don't know about you guys, but did y'all have time periods for lunch, where it was like you only had 20, less than 30 minutes to eat, and that's it, and then
Yep.
you go back to your next class.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
that's crazy. And then like you
Yep.
wonder why people eat so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
And even
And
now,
that, I
in
mean, not
like,
for nothing. Like,
go ahead.
I don't know, you go.
I was gonna say even now, like in corporate, like you get like
I was gonna say the
it's
same thing.
mandated that you have a 30-minute lunch break, and like I know for me,
But that's
like
it.
when I go to work, like I don't like, even when I'm taking lunch, people are still calling me. People still want things done. Like I'm not actually getting a break unless I leave the building.
Yeah.
I'm not getting a lunch break, and but also that same concept is like you're like, okay, I only have 15 minutes till the next meeting, or I got to do this or that, and then so you're just like shoving it all in, and then you feel like crap, or like you didn't even get to enjoy like what you did have, and like
Yep.
and
And not for
I think in
nothing, but
that,
the actual digestion and like the like crap that does to your body just to eat that quickly, it's so bad for you. It's so bad for
right,
you.
right,
What you're
and then you
eating
don't
just
even,
as
and then you
bad.
miss the trigger too that tells you when you're full. And like I am notoriously known to be a slow eater because I like to talk a lot when I eat. It's just a thing that I do.
That's so good.
Like,
That's so good for
yeah,
you.
like we'll go out to dinner and like I am talking, and people are like, "Are you gonna eat? Are you gonna eat?" And like I only eat like half of my plate while everybody else is just like shoveling it in.
Chowing down.
But like when I take my time, I realize that like yeah, I only needed like half of what I actually made, and like
Oh yeah.
realizing that from the get-go and not even making all that food in the first place would be even better. But
Well, then you have leftovers. It's fine.
well, yeah, true. True. But I think too, like, and I think something too that like I like I know like Alex, like I don't know as far as like you, like if you cook a lot like in your house, like I know like I do most of the cooking here because I like to, and I know Lexi that you do too. But like I have turned cooking like as far as like so like steering away from that and then moving into the energy of the that you're putting into the food. So like then go back to like corporate, right? So you've just worked your day, you're most likely pissed off by the time you get home, and now you got to feed your family. And you're like, fuck this.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to do it. And so you're just mad and you're throwing things together and you're putting all that in and you feed it to your family, and then your family's all mad and angry. And then you wonder why. And like so we now have this rule in our house that like if I'm in a bad mood, or whoever the person is that's cooking, what often it's me, and if I'm in a bad mood or I'm in a bad space, I'm not allowed to touch the food to make it. I have to go fix my shit before I prepare a meal, because it's not fair for everybody else to eat the bad energy that I'm putting into it. But like I don't think anybody ever and I never thought about that until very recently, of like the basically you're ingesting like stress and negativity and anger and all of these negative emotions that somebody is putting in, where like if you just actually like if and like a lot of times like it's like the moms of the household and like they like cooking but they just don't want to do it Monday through Friday because they're just fed up, and you can't really blame them either, but like and if you actually put your love and good energy into your food, like what does that do? Like
Oh yeah.
just imagine that. And so like we like I've created this whole like ritual around my cooking and thanking the food that is coming from the earth that I'm getting, and for letting me use it and eat it and nourish our bodies and all of these things. And I don't think anybody ever really thinks about much of that. I know, I like in the household
No, I
I
mean,
grew up
think
in,
about
that definitely was
yeah.
not thought about.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
no, absolutely not. I mean, I do the
yeah.
same thing. And also, too, like, I add light language to making my food. I also add it in, too, before I eat something. Because for me, like, I know just scientifically, like, I know that I have issues with, there's a gene called MTHFR that I know that we've talked about outside of the podcast and stuff like that. But I have that gene, and basically it just keeps my body from being able to process things the way that it's supposed to. So for me, I've been very insistent and very diligent on, and I don't say it out loud either. Like that's something too that I think a lot of people are like, oh man, I don't want to do that because I don't want to look like a freak, or I don't want to, whatever. But like when I'm making food, like I'll say it, but then like when we go to sit down, like I'm just kind of like setting intention and just saying it in my head. And for me, it's like, okay, great. Like now my food is blessed and my food is going to nourish me and my body is going to know exactly what to do with it, because it does. Just because there's a gene doesn't mean that it doesn't know or it forgot. Like it does know. I just need to do the right things for it. And at least for me, like I have noticed a significant difference in my digestion, like significant. Whereas like, over Thanksgiving, like we initially started talking about, like I felt like crap. I felt so bad. And it's like the food that we were eating wasn't like horrible. It wasn't like, overly processed, and it wasn't like really bad. Like there were definitely like some years that, growing up we were having food and it's just like, oh my God, this is the worst food ever for any of us to be eating. So it wasn't like that bad, but even so, I just did not feel good. And it's like, because I wasn't doing any of that stuff, I prepared it with the same intention and stuff like that. But also I was just kind of like, oh yeah, I'm just going to shove this food in my face and like not, bless it or use light language or do anything to it. And then I just felt terrible. So it's like double combo of not being good and also just not doing that stuff to it either. It's been kind of
Right.
crazy.
There is something to
and like
it
I
with
think
what
that's
you're
and that's
doing
where like the process. Go ahead, Alex.
Oh no! Oh, I was just gonna say that there are a lot of cultures outside of obviously the religious culture, the religion, but there are a lot of cultures, even ancient ones, that have some sort of blessing to their food before they eat it. Also joined with everybody else in their community, but there's something to be said by doing that and to hold that kind of honor for what you're putting into your body, because what you put in obviously
It's fuel.
affects you.
Yeah,
So
it's
yeah.
fuel. It's not just food, it's fuel for your body. And when you think about it that way, it makes that choice and that decision to be like, hey, should I eat this McDonald's or not? Probably
Right.
not. Like, that's not going to be good for my fuel. Like, that's not a good source of fuel. That's like putting corn syrup in your car. Like, that's not going to work.
Yep.
And I think too that's the difference between like growing your own food, like if you have the ability to like have a garden and grow your own food, and like you're proud of that, like you're like, I grew a whole tomato and I know where it came from, I know that nothing bad got put on it, I know it didn't come from halfway across the world, like, and so like you can be proud of that. And so when you are thankful for that, you're like, wow, like this is like a lot of work that went into this. But like when you're just pulling everything off the shelves, which the majority of us do, especially like when you live in areas where you have cold months and you can't garden, year round, but like it's
Grow
just
indoors.
right.
Grow in your house.
Yeah. The dog will eat it all.
The dog will eat it all. Put it up
That's how
somewhere.
you really did.
Make a little greenhouse. Right? Yeah.
He
He's
also
like,
loves
seal
the
of approval.
plant-based
This is
diet.
great.
Yeah, exactly. And that's our plan, is like once we're up at the property to
you guys are gonna have
build,
so
like,
much option.
like combine with the other people who are like the other family members who are up there and like go in on a big greenhouse, because like we all like to do it, so why not something that you can do year round. And
absolutely,
it's just, I don't know, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's why my mom and my stepdad moved to Kentucky. I mean, they can't, where we are in Colorado, like the way that the sun is during the year, you physically are it's almost impossible to have anything grow out here. Like our soil freezes, it's frozen until like April. Most people are like already done with like their first round of gardening at that point. Like it's almost impossible to grow anything out here. And like, especially in the cities and stuff, like you can't have chickens, you can't have like dairy cows or sheep or goats or anything like that. So it's like, unless you're blessed with an opportunity to be in an area like that, like for you guys or like for my parents, like they're on a farm right now, like literally on a farm. I think they have like 6.5 acres or something like that. They just got chickens last weekend. They agree, I guess. I don't know, but it's crazy. Like, if you don't have those opportunities and those options, like, what's the next best step? Like, what's like the next alternative for you?
Right. And then we've talked about too, like we are like, we buy bulk in like avocados. We love them. But like, you look on the label and almost everything, even like our fruit, anything you get, it's not from here. Most of it comes from Mexico or Peru or somewhere where they can grow it year round. And then you're like, how did that get from there to here? And like, your avocado's still not even ripe. It's not even ripe. Like, I got to put these things in a paper bag to ripen them up to be able to actually eat them within a week. And like,
a lot of produce from the grocery store is covered in wax. Yeah, so a lot of it's covered in wax, and like a lot of, like, I always remember too, the apples. It's like apples during apple season, right? Like, that's one thing that we both miss so much from living in New York. Like, there's not many things for me personally, but like, the apple season in New York was like, so good. But like, most of the apples that you see on the shelves in the grocery store, you can guarantee it's almost 2 years old at that point. Because from time of picking, they put them into this like horrible wash that puts just wax all over them, and then they freeze them. And usually they're frozen somewhere for a year. And then like the next year they pull them out and they're ready to be put on the shelves. So it's like, oh yeah, that apple looks amazing. It looks so good, but it's covered in crap. It's usually from a farm that has, a bunch of pesticides that it uses, which is the reason why it looks absolutely perfect. And then you have wax all over it. And most people just eat those apples, not realizing that they're ingesting all the chemicals and all the wax on it. It's just wild to me. Absolutely wild.
Mm-hmm. Ew,
yeah. And like, that's just gross.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, ew. It's just terrible.
It is kind of crazy.
Oh yeah. 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 But like, the fact that that's allowed. Like, what? Huh?
Right. Like, we're okay with that. And then like, you even look on,
a lot of people don't know it.
They don't know.
Right. And you look at like, if you look at like, you can have the same food here, like even a processed food, right? A package of cookies or chips or something here and somewhere halfway across the world, and the ingredients are completely different because
totally different.
They have regulations that don't allow all of these chemicals and dyes and all these things to go into these foods.
Yep.
And we're just like,
yeah, it's fine.
We're doing the best we can over here. We are.
I just came from Mexico.
Top of the food chain.
Yeah. Well, I just came back from Mexico a couple weeks ago, and on all of the sodas and chips and all kinds of like bag stuff and sweets, there's a huge warning label at the top: excess sodium, excess sugar, and it's huge, big label right on the front. And you're like, oh, should I eat this?
Maybe I shouldn't eat this. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. That's like,
and
that's like
probably the exact same.
It's the same,
and that's like in
potato chips, yeah.
Yeah, and that's like in New York City. Like in certain cities, like they have to now like label what the nutritional value of like certain foods are, and like that's not everywhere though. In New York State, it's only like in New York City, like they have to do that. So you go to a restaurant and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna get that burger and fries, and you look at it and you're like, oh, no, I'll take the salad.
Oh God, maybe not.
Like,
yeah,
I want the McDonald's that doesn't have what the Big Mac calories are next to it, because it's just way easier to eat it without knowing and pretend like you're naive to it, instead of actually like reading the 3,000 calories and then saying, yes, I will take that Big Mac now.
Also,
and it's going to be so good
that they put more than one serving in a bag of chips, usually.
Right. What is that? I've always thought that. I'm like, why is there more? If the serving size is X, why do I have this big giant thing? No one's just going to eat a serving size of whatever. Like, just stop. And they know it.
Right.
Yeah, they know it.
And on that note, now that you mentioned like the bag size, when I was at
getting all riled up.
When I was at the store the other day, I couldn't figure it out. Now it all makes sense. That hold on. That like you go to the chip aisle, right? And then it's like you have the normal size bag, then you have the family bag, then you have the party size bag. So you got like 3 different sizes of the same thing. And the one that's on sale is the party size bag. It's cheaper
every
than
time.
the smallest
Every
bag.
time.
Why? But now that we've had
Mhm.
this conversation, I know why. Hello. Well, buy the bigger bag because you're just going to eat more shit.
Mhm.
Well, so when it comes to the sugary sodas and the chips, you'll always notice that the bigger bag is cheaper than the smallest, either container or bag, because what they're making money on, I believe, is
What's the container?
the emptiness
They
of.
lose. Yeah, so they lose money, and this is actually something because I used to work at Burger King when I was in high school, and that's something that always stuck with me was just knowing that like most fast food places, most restaurants, most pretty much everywhere loses money on the actual food itself because it's more expensive for them to actually produce or, you know, provide the food than it is for other things like drinks or desserts or packaging. So most of the time, like if you go like to a fast food restaurant or something, and you want just like can't just buy a cup. They're still going to charge you the same size, like the same amount of money, like the $1.27 or whatever it is for like the large cup, even though like you just want the cup itself, because that's what they're actually making money on. They can't actually make money on the food itself. So anything that they're serving is going to be like adjusted for price that way. And that's the exact same thing for packaging because they're losing money on the food that's inside. The only way that they're going to make money is from the packaging. So if they have that family size bag and there's like 2/3 of it that's full of air, I literally just opened up a bag of chips from Thanksgiving, y'all, and like more than 2/3 of it was air. I was pissed. I was so mad. I'm like, what is this? Because it was like, you know, $5 or $6 for this stupid thing of chips because it was like a big old thing of chips. Most of it's empty. But remembering though too, like we're saying,
right?
Exactly.
So you're like really getting the same volume. Anyway,
exactly, it's the
just looks
exact
bigger
same
'cause
thing. Yeah, it just looks like it's bigger. It looks like you're getting a better deal, and they know that. They know that. Like, don't get me started on the marketing and the psychology behind food and grocery stores, but like that is 1,000% the reason why they do it.
Alex, I mean, I think you've talked about that before, Alex, haven't you? As far as like, because you've been involved in like marketing for food,
so
like for different companies.
It is a thing, and I would say that it's gotten worse. Will you notice like I think Chips Ahoy cookies is a perfect example. Back in the day, the Chips Ahoy cookie was like, I don't know, 3 inches maybe.
No, I mean, they were decent. Yeah, larger. They were decent size. Yeah, and now they're like that big.
And now they're like a little larger than a quarter. And you're like, wait, what's going on here? And they taste
it's crazy. What is this?
Ingredients taste worse.
Yeah, so they're disgusting.
Like, ingredients are worse. It's smaller. The bag is now costing me like 3 times the amount it did 10 years ago. What's going on here? And a lot of people don't notice. Because I think like another layer to all this, total tangent here, is that once you're hooked on a certain brand or whatever it may be, you don't question it anymore. You just keep going because that's the brand that you always get, or the brand that you're hooked on, or your family's on, or whatever it may be. You got your Coke family, you got your Pepsi family, you got the ones that like all.
And there are people that will literally fight to the death about Coke or Pepsi, like fight to the death. It's insane.
Okay. We can call this the next section of that could be all about the brands of all this.
Right. I love it.
Food. But yeah.
But yeah, and like that's just so it's like
color on your psychology too. And they use certain words. And they show you certain imagery. Because a lot of people want to feel a part of something. So it's all just to get you hooked, basically.
In retrospect, Alex, like working for that type of stuff, does it bother you that like
it bothers me. I had to stop doing that because it doesn't feel good to know. It's kind of cool to see what the next new thing is, but it doesn't feel good to know that it's all just a make-believe lie. None of this stuff is good for you. None of it.
There you have it.
There it is.
None of it is good for you. Grow your
Everyone
food.
just start growing your own
and
food
eat it.
and yeah.
Make your own
And
product.
Make your own food.
And don't put your bad, shitty energy into it either.
There you go. There you go.